G'day Reefers, I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Thanks for watching Gallery Aquatica TV. Today we're at Splashback Reef. Splashback Reef is one of the biggest and best tanks that we look after, and with this tank we test all the parameters, and today we're going to talk about what we test and how we test it, the brands we use. So today's episode is all about testing the water at Splashback Reef. So you might have seen my test kit that I have with me when I'm out on the road servicing tanks. Let's have a look at exactly what test kits I have in my kit. One of the most important things about testing the water chemistry in your tank is that you log it. Now the reason why you need to log your results is because it's very important to see the trends with each of the parameters over time. Now we use these laminated parameter logs, and this is an example of one of the older ones. This actually goes back a few years with this one, and to see the parameters that we've got on here, we'll have a quick look. We've got nitrate, phosphate, which are our nutrients. We've got calcium, carbonate hardness or KH, salinity, magnesium, and on the newer ones, pH has its own column. So these are the parameters that we're going to test on this tank. Let's have a look at the different brands of test kits that we use for each of these parameters. So first of all, phosphate. With phosphate, we use the Hanna checker. Now the reason why the Hanna checker is a particularly good option for this type of testing is because it's a very precise way to get your phosphate reading. Some of the liquid solutions can be difficult to get a real precise reading, so we use the Hanna checker when it comes to phosphate. We typically use refractometers when we're testing the salinity or the specific gravity of the water. Now refractometers are a good option. They're quite easy to use, and particularly when they're on the road, they're very easy for us to quickly use, to quickly test the salinity of the water. One thing that you do need to ensure is that you do regularly calibrate them, and so we calibrate this pretty much every time we use it, or at least every day. So the next is magnesium. With magnesium we use the Red Sea. And Red Sea is a very precise way of testing the magnesium. I find it the easiest. Cellophate is also very popular, but I do particularly like the Red Sea when it comes to magnesium. Now when it comes to calcium and KH, which are arguably two of the most important parameters, I use the Cellophate. Now I like the Cellophate because it gives a precise reading of your calcium and KH. But I also find it quite quick and easy to use, and you might notice that I do mention quick because when I'm on the road doing regular tests for lots of different tanks, it is important that the tests that we do are relatively quick, and that's a criteria we use to choose the brands of each of the test kits. But I do particularly like the Cellophate. The only issue I have is that it comes in a cardboard box, and for me with my test kits I find that the cardboard box crushes and crumbles, so I generally use a little Tupperware container to keep each of them in. So that is the KH, and this is the calcium. The calcium has an extra part. These are both titrations, so we'll tell you what that means in a minute. Now this might be the most shocking part of today's episode. I actually use API for both nitrate and pH. Now a lot of people will argue that the precision of the API isn't adequate for most marine tanks. Now when it comes to nitrate, it is difficult to get a real precise reading with the color chart, but I can generally tell just by the color if the nitrate level in the tank is where I need it to be or if it's way off. If I do need to really fine tune the reading that I'm getting with the nitrate, I will use Red Sea, but this gives me enough information for the majority of tanks that I do. The important thing with the API nitrate though is that you thoroughly shake the second reagent, and a lot of the problems that people have with the API nitrate is the fact that they're not thoroughly shaking the bottle. I also use the API high range pH test, and I find it quick and easy, and I honestly find it as good as any of the other brands. So this is all the brands of the parameters tests that we do. So let's have a quick look at the individual ones and how we actually use them. We're going to start with the phosphate as our first test. So we have 2 vials, we need 1 of the sachets of the reagent, and our Hannah checker. So first of all, we'll open up the hood. So, hey Google, open aquarium hood. So we have 2 vials, and with each of the vials we have filled with the sample of water up to the line. Now I always keep these very dry because they're going to be inserted into the Hannah checker, and to one of these vials you add a sachet of the reagent. So I make a little spout like so, and tap on the top, and this way all of the reagent will go into the vial. I always check in the corners to make sure I've got it all. Yep. Now this is going to be reagent 2. Give it a shake. So this is our first vial with the sample but no reagent. I'm going to put that into the Hannah checker, close the lid properly. I'll press the button. It'll say add C1, which is already in there, and press. Takes a second. Now it'll say add C2. And now what I'm going to do is hold down for 3 seconds, and that will bring up a timer. So this is a 3-minute timer which just allows the reagent to fully affect a colour change. And we're going to sit this right here, and in 3 minutes we're going to have a look at the result. In the 3 minutes that it takes for our phosphate Hannah checker to give us a reading, I will typically do 1 or 2 other tests, generally the quick ones such as the salinity of the water. Now typically in Australia we talk in specific gravity, and generally the specific gravity of the water that we're looking for is 1.025 or 1.026. So I'm just going to put a few drops of our sample onto the refractometer, close the top, and then I look through it like a kaleidoscope up to a light like so, and inside I can see a little window which has a list of the specific gravity on one side and the PPT on the other. And basically what I'm doing is just lining up, looking at where the line is on the refractometer to get a reading. And here we've got a reading of 1.027, so it's slightly on the high side. I may add a little bit of RO water to reduce it, but I'm not too worried about that. So our phosphate level is 0.11. Now this is ppm, and 0.11 is actually on the higher side of what this tank normally runs at. Typically this tank runs at what I call single digits, so somewhere between 0.01 and 0.09. So this is a little bit high, and we'll have a look downstairs in the filter to see if there's any reasons for that. Now let's look at the next parameter we're going to test, magnesium. So magnesium is a titration, and what a titration is basically where you add the titratant slowly drop by drop to a point where it will affect a color change in the sample and the reagents. So I'm going to prepare our titratant, which is part C. I like to get this ready first. I'm just drawing the solution up into the syringe, and then this is the important thing, that the little black plunger lines up exactly on the line. You disregard the fact that there's an air bubble in here. You're not looking at the line of the reagent, you're looking at the line of the black plunger. It's a very important point. So this is our titratant ready to go. I'll put it in our titrator and you'll see how we use this in a minute. But now I'm going to prepare the sample. I have 2 ml of water from our tank. I'll add that into our vial. We've got 2 reagents. The first of which, A, is added drop by drop with 15 seconds swirling in between drops. So, first drop, and I like to count 1, 2, 3 in my head before I add the second drop, and then we'll do this for the remaining 4 drops. Now we have our second reagent, reagent B, and these 5 drops can be put in all at the one time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You always try and hold the bottle of any of the reagents as vertical as possible so that you have consistent drop size. So now I'm going to swirl this for a minute, but I'm going to put it on the titrator whilst I'm swirling. And what's going to happen is, as I add the titratant, this reagent is going to change, the sample with the reagents is going to change from pink to a blue. And at the point that it changes to the blue is when you want to stop adding the titratant, and then we'll check our level of magnesium. Okay, so start off fairly quick. I know that it's not going to be a low magnesium, but now when I get closer to the reading, I'll go more slowly, swirling more. So that's actually affected the titration. So now we look at the level on the syringe, and it is 0.27, and so I know this equates to it's almost 1480. So the magnesium for this is 1480, so it's on the high side of what we would normally run. Now, most importantly, I'm going to record these levels on our parameter sheet with the date. Next comes KH. So we've got our salifert, all the ingredients that we need are here, and with the KH we start with 4 ml of the sample. But as always, I'm going to prepare my titratant first. So with the salifert you don't get the titrator, but it's pretty much just as easy. I'm just drawing up 1 ml, again lining up the black plunger with the 1 ml mark. That's it there. So that's ready to go. Now the KH is very easy with the salifert. It is our 4 ml in the syringe, straight into the vial, and 4 drops of the reagent. 1, 2, 3, 4. Give it a bit of a swirl. Whilst I'm doing that, I'll put the lid back on the reagent. I'm going to add the titratant slowly, and I go a little bit more slowly with this one because with the salifert and not having the titrator, you need to ensure that you don't miss the end point. Now we're just waiting for it to go from a blue to a pink. So I'm going 2 drops at a time. In a second I'll go down to 1 drop. You generally get a feel for where you're sitting with your KH and calcium, and you can go fast with the titratant up to the point that up to where you're close to. So this is going purple now, so we're very close to our end point. Drop 1 drop at a time. There's another drop. Okay. One thing I do find a little bit more difficult with the Salifert is ensuring that I don't miss the vial, and something that is worth investing in is a magnetic stirrer so that it stirs the vial whilst you add the titrations. So what we're going to do in this one is we're going to take the reading. So it's 0.42 on our syringe, and we're going to check our chart to see what that tells us. Now this is saying that the KH in this tank is 8.9. So 0.42 gives us a KH of 8.9. So we'll record that and then we'll do calcium. Calcium is very similar to the KH, apart from the fact that it has 1 extra step, and that step is a powder, and it's a 2 ml of the sample. So we'll add that to our vial, and so with the powder you put in 1 level spoon. Okay, 1 little spoon into the vial, and before you shake you add the second reagent, 10 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you swirl. So this one is going to go from the pink to a blue. So swirling as we add the reagent. Again, I start out fast. This one's a little bit difficult to do under the blue of the LEDs. Sometimes it's a bit more difficult to see the end point. And sometimes I will go outside to make sure I've got it right. So now it's blue. We take our reading, 0.06. We check it on our chart. 0.06 is 470. So the calcium is 470, a little bit higher than we would normally run on this tank. So we'll go downstairs in a minute and turn down the calcium on the dosing pump. But importantly, we'll record it, and then we'll do the last two, the API, nitrate, and pH. So the API nitrate is always going to be the contentious parameter and brand that we use here. And a lot of people don't like this. However, we find it is absolutely adequate for us to get a feel of the tank. Now, the important thing, as I've already said, is that you shake reagent number 2 very thoroughly. And then it's a very simple case of 10 drops of reagent 1, 10, quick shake, and then shaking just before I add the 10 drops of reagent 2. And then give it another shake. So we'll give this a minute. Now, one of the things that I often see with people that complain they're not getting consistent readings with their API nitrate is that you'll find that the second reagent will actually become clogged up, and if it's clogged up and difficult to get the drops out, then you know you haven't shaken it enough. So it's certainly a brand which is prone to its difficulties needing to be shaken, but if you use it properly, it will definitely give you a good indication. It does take a few minutes before we get a reading, so whilst we're waiting for this, we're going to do the pH. And the pH is probably the most simple test that we do. It's really just a case of 5 drops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we would normally hold this up against a color chart to get the reading of the pH. But I've actually got to a point, having done so many of these pH test kits, that I don't even carry the color charts anymore. And so I can look at the color and know that that's about 8.3. When it's a real sort of purpley color, the more pink and purple in the color, the closer it is, or the higher it is. If it's more of a yellowy brown, then it's lower. So the pH of this one is 8.3. Now, it is too early for us to get a reading for this, but I can see that there's a tinge of orange. The nitrate is probably going to be around about 5, so I'm going to record it as that. So this is everything that we've done. So let's have a look at the results and what we're going to do based on the results that we've got from these tests. After we check the parameters of our tank, the important thing is that we look at the results and think about what we need to do to improve them. Now, the nitrate is usually around about 0, but it is a little bit higher at the moment at 5. And one of the suggestions I'm going to make is a water change on this tank. The phosphate also being a little bit high is something that we can look at, and I'll have a look downstairs and just see if there's anything that could be causing that higher phosphate. Sometimes it could be something simple like a coral decaying in the tank or excess food going in, but I'm not too worried about that. I am actually a little bit more worried about the calcium being at 470. Generally, I prefer this tank to be running a bit lower, 430 sort of thing, and it along with the magnesium are higher than we want. So what I'm going to do is go downstairs, look at the dosing pump, and probably reduce the amount of calcium and magnesium going into the tank, probably by about 10%. Now, the reduction in the amount of calcium and KH going in, and magnesium going into the tank, coupled with the water change that I'm going to suggest we do on this tank, should bring us back to our ideal figures for this tank. The salinity is a little bit on the high side, as I said. I may add a little bit of RO water into this tank. And the pH was good, so I'm not too worried about that. So, that's everything that we do in terms of testing the water on Splashback Reef. And hopefully you've enjoyed this episode of Gallery Aquatica TV. And next time we'll bring you more about Splashback, and we'll have a look at the filtration and everything else to do with this awesome tank. So thanks for watching Gallery Aquatica TV. I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Happy reefing!
So that's our video for today. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe as well. We'll be putting out videos every week showing a new tank with new products. There's going to be lots in all the videos. I'm Cam the Fish Guy, and keep on reefing.